All right, welcome everyone. Tonight we are discussing climate change's impacts on human health. And we have Catherine Allen with us tonight, which I'm really excited about. So thank you, Catherine. I'm with the Northern Arizona Climate Change Alliance, and we're hosting this presentation tonight. For those of you who didn't hear me, I did mute everyone just for some added security, but we will have a Q&A session at the end where you will be unmuted. But until then, you're more than welcome to go ahead and put any questions you have during the presentation in the chat box, and we'll go through those at the end as well. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to turn it over to Carrie, who is the other organizer. She's going to tell you a little bit about our organization before Catherine gets started.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm the community organizer in the West region. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about NAZCA. We are a local grassroots people-powered movement in Northern Arizona. Our mission is to educate and empower people to take action against the negative impacts of climate change. We're nonprofit, nonpartisan, because we believe that everyone needs to work together to fight climate change. We have amazing volunteers throughout Northern Arizona, a group that is always evolving and growing to tackle these issues that are most important to each of our communities. If you'd like to learn more about working with us, Jenna or myself are happy to help in the areas that we work in. It doesn't even matter if you have 5 minutes or 5 hours to spare, and whatever your talents are, we can always find a place for you to help out. So that's why we call everybody that's a part of our work the NAZCA community, because we really feel like we're a family. So thank you so much for being here, and I'm going to pass this on to Jenna to introduce our presenter tonight.
Thank you, Carrie. So it's my pleasure to welcome and introduce Catherine Allen. I just started to get to know Catherine this summer, and she is amazing, and she's on board with helping our organization do anything. She's always offering to help, and so we already love her so much. So Catherine grew up all over. We were actually talking about this just before you got on, and the list is very long, so I'll name a few of them. She grew up in Venezuela, Colombia, Australia, Hong Kong. She's also lived in New York, Connecticut, North Carolina, Louisiana, and Hawaii. I could have missed some, but she's been in Flagstaff for the past, now is working on a brand new class about climate change and health. And so we are very happy to have her here tonight. So welcome, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Jenna and Carrie. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So I'm gonna try to share my screen. Wish me luck. Here we go. Click, click, click. How's it looking so far? Can everybody see that? Start that is that Matthew Nesbitt's research on how we can frame climate change and get meaningful than talking about how much carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere. When we talk about climate change as a risk to our health, people find that more meaningful and arguably more detectable than greenhouse gases. The outline of our presentation, my presentation tonight, is going to be this. We're going to go over climate change's impacts on human health. First, starting with who is more impacted. I'm going to go over 4 climate change health patterns that I see. There's such a plethora of information on this topic. I think it's helpful at times to look at all the information and look to see what categories they fall under to just help organize it all. So I'm going to talk about those, and one health concern that is associated with all 4. As we go, I've inserted solutions, what others are doing, what you can do, and what still needs to be done, because quite frankly, I'm worried I'm going to run out of time. So I want to make sure you get the good news as well as the problems. So here we go. Climate change's impacts on human health. As you know, our climate is warming and it's creating hazards like floods, storms, droughts, wildfires, heat waves, to name a few. Everyone's health is being impacted by this, especially if we have these health conditions: a respiratory condition, diabetes, cardiovascular conditions, a mental illness, allergies to pollen, a disability. We're more at risk if we work and play outdoors. Other things that put us at higher risk for negative health impacts due to climate change depend on who we are demographically speaking, which all comes down to who among us is being marginalized by the people who have power over us. The USA has a long history of marginalizing people of color, people who earn low incomes, people who are elderly, and people who are different. Where we live can also increase our health risks due to climate change. Those include neighborhoods of color, which have a multitude of pollutants being dumped in them. That's our history. And low-income communities suffer higher risk of heat exposure during heat waves. They also have trouble evacuating during floods, and they are at higher risk of mental illnesses due to these extreme events. I want to start off with solutions here. We need to put who's most exposed to the negative health effects of climate change at the top of our climate adaptations list. They need to be at the top of the list. A few specifics we could do. These are things that we could improve upon. We need to improve our water quality systems here in the USA. Some areas have poor water treatment and water sanitation infrastructure. Their equipment is out of date. They're not filtering things like endocrine disruptors out of the water. So we need to be working on that. We need universal health care for everyone. And the reason I say that is because we're going to have more people with more health problems. They're going to need to see a doctor. And we need to make this happen so that it's not just on paper, so that it's not just a law. For example, in order to make universal access happen in reality, we're going to need more healthcare providers. We're going to need to lower our healthcare costs. And we're going to have to make sure that our healthcare workforce is trained to spot diseases they've never seen before, to know how to diagnose them and to know how to treat them. As I just said, where we live impacts our climate change health risks. So one location is the urban heat island. Those can be 5 to 18 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than their surrounding areas. So one thing that the city of Louisville is doing to reduce their heat island effect is they're trying to push white roofs and green roofs in the city of Louisville. And these are a couple of photographs of some buildings in the city of Louisville. San Francisco, California has mandated that green roofs and solar panels be on all newly built buildings in the city of San Francisco, covering at least 15 to 30% of the roof area, which is pretty cool. It could be any combination thereof. Now, the thing with these roofs is that there are mixed results in the research as to whether or not they actually cool urban heat islands. But what they do is they make it better for the buildings in air conditioning needs and heating needs. White roofs and green roofs reduce the need for air conditioning in the summer. Green roofs have an ability to insulate the building better, so that reduces heating costs in the winter. And on top of that, the green roofs will filter rainwater. I'm sure you've all heard of acid rain. Rain can have contaminants in it. When it hits that green roof, the growing medium will filter that out. So that helps the water treatment infrastructure not be so overwhelmed. It slows down rainflow also. Our healthcare system is it puts out a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. It consumes a lot of energy. So hospitals need to get on board with this in cutting their energy. Toronto's Humber River Hospital is a LEED design certified building, and they cut their energy consumption by 40%. An even better solution, if you haven't heard of Brad Lancaster, I highly recommend you Google Brad Lancaster and rainwater. He spearheaded a community action project where here on the picture on the left, you see what their neighborhood looked like in 1995. And then when we visited that neighborhood in 2019, that is the exact same street corner. And you see on the right how much greener it is. How did they do that? Well, they cut the curb, water comes down, and they built this basin. Brad would say, plant water before you plant your plants. And what he means by that is you create a situation where rainwater pools up and waters the plants. On top of that, if you look at what's growing there, they've got prickly pear and mesquite trees. These are food producers, which is pretty cool. So here's a diagram of Brad's system where rainwater is greening up their neighborhood in Tucson. The mesquite beans they collect, they grind up and they make into a flour. And what's interesting is that Brad said that they found that some trees make better tasting flour than others in their neighborhood. And they make those into pancakes. They use that flour to make pancakes. Here's Brad talking to my husband and his colleague, Andy Mason. Now, they were interested in agroforestry. What they're looking at is this map. And what I'm interested in as someone in health and who cares about people surviving heat waves is that all that green cover, yay, we've got green cover, but look at the gray. Wherever it's shaded gray on that map, that is a cooler surface temperature. So white roofs, green roofs may not do much, but what does make a difference are trees and plants. That is a hands-on solution to our urban heat islands. The four main patterns that I've seen with regard to climate change's impacts on human health, I'm going to say all of them now in case I run out of time. So the first pattern is that familiar seasonal health concerns are being exacerbated by climate change. The second is that, hang on a second. Oh, right, life on Earth is migrating. The third is food insecurity is increasing. And the fourth is our exposure to pollution is increasing. Now, those are whenever I look at a news article or something, some new information, new discovery about health and climate change, 9 times out of 10, it's going to fit into one of those categories, one of those 4 categories. What I mean by familiar is that the health problems I'm going to be talking about in a minute, we know, you have seen them already. What I mean by seasonal is summer season, monsoon season, fire season. What I mean by exacerbation is that climate change is making these seasonal health problems arrive sooner, or it's making them leave later, or it's making these seasonal health hazards more intense, or it's climate change is making the seasonal health hazard happen more frequently than it used to before. For example, if anybody here is allergic to pollen, you're already an expert on what medications work for you, what medications don't work for you. Maybe you've moved to some place in order to get away from the pollen that you're allergic to. Well, the bad news is that climate change is resulting in pollen moving into new areas as plants migrate. Those of us who don't have asthma may not know this, but pollen can trigger asthma attacks. climate change is going to be making these pollen seasons longer and more severe. And what they mean by severe is that with every breath we take, we're going to be, as carbon dioxide goes up in the atmosphere, indoor studies have shown that, say, ragweed is making more pollen as temperatures go up and as carbon dioxide goes up. So every breath we take, we're going to be inhaling more numerous pollen grains. And that's really bad if you have an allergy to this stuff. Mosquito season, year-round, mostly March through October here in Arizona. Here are some of the diseases that mosquitoes carry, and I don't know if you really want a lot of detail on these diseases. The main point is that there are certain species of mosquitoes carry these diseases and more. The ones in bold here are not transmitted locally here in Arizona or indeed in the United States, but with climate change that may come. We might start to see dengue fever locally transmitted, same with malaria, same with chikungunya, same with yellow fever. The good news is the diseases in green font there, we have vaccines that work for dengue fever and yellow fever. We have a malaria vaccine, it's just not very effective. For all the others listed there, we don't have a vaccine. Climate change is making for longer summers. A longer summer means a longer mosquito season, which means a longer disease transmission season. Warmer summers are also increasing mosquito populations. Let's say the first circle there that we just saw spin around, that's how fast it took for, just modeling here, how fast an egg grows to become an adult. We add heat to that, it speeds up. They mature faster. And then they become reproductive faster. So that adds up to more mosquitoes. So bigger mosquito density with climate change. Also, warmer temperatures and drought have been associated with faster virus replication inside the mosquito. We add heat to this and drought situations. That speeds up, which means that inside each mosquito, there are more viruses. When that mosquito bites our child playing outside, that mosquito is going to be injecting more virus particles with that one bite. And that is an impact of climate change on our health. Louisiana has been rated by the National Association of County and City Health officials as 100% competent at controlling mosquito populations. These red pickup trucks go through neighborhoods. Everybody has seen them. Everybody knows about them in Louisiana. They spray insecticides throughout neighborhoods. After hurricanes, they get these huge mosquito population explosions, and that's when they, no kidding, they call in the US Air Force, and the US Air Force sprays the insecticides. They also test the insecticides to make sure they're effective, because over time, mosquitoes get resistant to the insecticides that are being sprayed. So a good thing that Louisiana does is that they regularly test the insecticides they're using. Emily Booth there has sprayed the inside of that bottle, the inside walls of that jar has insecticide on it, and she puts mosquitoes in there and she times to see how long it takes for the mosquitoes to die. And that's how they test their insecticide. And really cool about Louisiana is they are constantly letting the public know. I took this screen cap of St. Tammany Parish's mosquito abatement map 2 days ago. And right there you can see that if you're going to be working outside in St. Tammany Parish, there's a map telling you there's a slight risk of West Nile virus infection there. Now, that's pretty cool. We can control mosquitoes right where we are. Mosquitoes can grow in as little as a tablespoon of water. It doesn't take much water. and we can look around where we live to make sure we don't have any standing of water there for too long. If we have bird baths or pet water bowls, we need to change that water. I would say at least 2 times a week. We want to be ahead of how fast the mosquitoes are reproducing. We don't want to push it too long to try to time it. We want to be dumping that water and changing that water faster than they can grow up and become adults. On the bottom part of this slide, we were walking through a sort of a townhouse adobe community in Tucson where they were growing fruit trees, which is awesome, and they were collecting rainwater to grow their fruit trees. And that's awesome too. Definitely collect rainwater if you can. That's great for conserving water and water volume and making for green spaces. But the thing that was bad, what with this homemade rainwater catchment container, was the screen that they had where the water from the roof flows in. I don't know if you can tell, but I could put my fingers through that grate. It was that big. And that's like saying to mosquitoes, welcome to our hotel. Come on in, reproduce, have fun. What we need if we're gonna have rainwater catchment is the same mesh that we would put in our windows to keep insects out. We need a mesh that's fine to keep mosquitoes out of our rainwater barrels. Heat waves are another familiar seasonal health concern, and they put us at risk for heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Why is that? Well, we have, when we're hot, doesn't matter how old we are, it doesn't matter what health conditions we have, to cool down, our hearts have to beat 2 to 3 times faster. So the scary part to heat waves is that everybody is at risk during a heat wave of having a heat-related injury or death. Dehydration, of course, is a risk during a heat wave. So let's slow down for a second. Everybody's heart is going to beat 2 to 3 times faster, but if that person has a heart condition, you can tell right there that they're going to be at higher risk of heat exhaustion and heat stroke, and maybe even heart failure during a heat wave. Dehydration can mess with people's blood sugar levels. Not everybody has air conditioning, so not everybody can escape the heat. And this is tied to income levels. If we have diabetes, the heat can mess with our blood sugar levels. It can go high if we're dehydrated. It can go low if our heart is beating too fast and our metabolism is going too fast. On top of that, a lot of us take medications that set us up to struggle to stay cool. These medications make it harder to cool down. Antidepressants, blood pressure medications, antihistamines, and also Parkinson's medications, diuretics. They can set us up to have a harder time cooling down during a heat wave. A solution to heat waves was put together by the Natural Resources Defense Council in the city of Ahmedabad in India in 2013. They got together, they put together this plan, and it's really cool because they start out, they have this color code alert system where yellow is like, watch out, it's going to be a warm day. Orange, watch out, it's going to be hotter. Red is, okay, everybody, pull out all the stops. It's going to be really bad. This heat wave is going to be really bad. But that alert system isn't just for the public. It activates a cascade of life-saving actions across the city. When they get a red alert, hospitals and clinics link together, they get coordinated to deal with the influx of heat-related illness patients that are going to be coming in. Employers of outdoor laborers provide water and shade and cooler working hours for their employees. Water tankers are driven to the slums of Ahmedabad. They limit non-essential water use. They make sure the electric power is going to stay on. To critical facilities like hospitals and clinics, and to neighborhoods with vulnerable populations to heat waves. They make sure they have their power. The transportation department puts up shade and water distribution at each and every bus stop. Temples and libraries become public cooling centers. The schools are alerted to change their school schedules. They may even cancel school for that day. And coupled with that, the public swimming pools and parks extend their hours. So it's really cool because they've taken this multi-pronged approach to help everybody get through the heat wave. In addition, in slum neighborhoods, they are using white roofs to help the interiors of the slums stay cooler. Now the slums in the city, as you can see in this photograph, that's the mayor of Ahmedabad. This is a celebration. We're starting this program event, and the mayor came out to paint the first roof white. The slums in India are packed together so close that they don't get a lot of breeze going through their living areas. They share walls with each other. So the white roofs was their way of trying to cool off the interior of those slums. Their results, they did evaluate. They found that they had 52% reduction in heat-related deaths after they implemented this plan. It worked. It saved lives. Their success led to India beginning to implement similar plans in 100 other cities and districts in 2020. We're doing the same in Phoenix. We're playing outdoors and working outdoors during the night hours, which are cooler, is going up. Maricopa County has senior centers and community centers serving as cooling and rehydration centers, just like Ahmedabad has. Maricopa County did try these in other public areas. They just found when they evaluated their program, they found that most of the public went to senior centers or community centers for cooling down during a heat wave. Folks with respiratory conditions and on hot days face another concern, which is ozone. Now, everybody is at risk of getting what doctors like to call sunburned lungs. So all of us end up with inflamed breathing surface, mucous membranes when we breathe in ozone. But for those of us with asthma, emphysema, chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder, chronic bronchitis, and even respiratory conditions like COVID, if we have COVID and we're breathing in ozone, our lungs are already struggling. We're going to have an even worse time. It's going to be more dangerous for us. So, for folks with asthma, this is a diagram showing what an asthma attack looks like. So for those of you who don't know much about asthma, it results in breathing airways becoming so inflamed that they literally start to close. So an asthma attack can be deadly. It can, death by suffocation. How climate change is impacting ozone is that the heat, if you look about halfway down on the left of your screen, you're going to see NOx plus VOC. Those are nitrous oxides and volatile organic compounds, which are emissions from industries, cars, etc. Plus heat and sunlight make ozone. And climate change is making it warming up the planet. We're getting more hot days. So we can expect, according to Bell, they did a study and they projected that cities east of the Mississippi can expect a 68% increase in the number of high ozone days moving forward. Here's some other seasons that we have. We have fire season, monsoon season, and dry season. We could call these particulate matter seasons. The fires may not be more in number, but they are becoming hotter. They're burning more intensely because drying out our forests here in the Southwest. This makes more smoke. This makes more particulate matter. Monsoons, we may be getting fewer number of storms altogether, less precipitation altogether, but when we do get a storm, it's going to be, because of climate change, it's going to be a more intense storm, maybe with higher winds. Those high winds kick up the haboobs. And this is a photograph of one over Phoenix. And of course, the dry season, also winds blowing dust up. What that all comes down to, here's what that all comes down to, is as we breathe this in, the particulates in the air can get into our lungs. And if we have a respiratory condition already, that with already, struggling lungs, the particulate matter is going to make us get inflamed again, or asthma attacks and so forth. For those of us who have cardiovascular conditions, the ultrafine particulate matter can leave the lungs, enter the bloodstream, and what then happens is what we always do when we have something foreign in our bloodstream. We're going to put platelets around that particulate matter. We're going to put white blood cells around that particulate matter. It's all going to get sticky. It's going to become a clot. So if we have someone who has a cardiovascular disease of narrowing of blood vessels, if they're breathing in a lot of particulate matter, they could have a premature death. This is why particulates can lead to premature deaths. The Southwest Watershed Research Center has found that since the 1970s, per monsoon storm, more rain is falling in a shorter amount of time. So our monsoon storms are getting more intense with climate change. This was in AP News just on November 11th, just a couple of weeks ago. They're found that published in peer-reviewed journal article Nature that hurricanes are not weakening as fast as they used to when they get over land. So that's going to increase exposure to high winds and floods for people who didn't used to experience that seasonal hazard. Here in Arizona, the storms and wildfires work together to create flash floods. I don't know, have you guys, maybe you remember Timberline neighborhood here in Flag, what they went through when there was a fire up on the mountain behind them. That baked the soil hard. The monsoons came, all that rain just ran off the mountain, down the mountain, into their neighborhoods, flooding homes, flooding around homes. Then another seasonal hazard is harmful algae blooms. The climate connection here to this seasonal health risk is that climate change is warming up the air, it's warming up the water. We've always had toxic algae blooms thanks to rain runoff and agricultural fertilizer running in that water into a body of water, which then feeds the algae and it blooms. But now the water is warmer, we're getting higher air temperature, we're getting increases in frequencies of flooding and so forth, which is creating exactly what algae like. So we're getting more frequent algae blooms. The ones that are toxic are the ones that produce poisons that cause nerve damage, liver damage, and kidney damage. And you may remember I don't remember if I think it was the summer of 2019. Folks in Georgia had a lot of toxic algae blooms and their dogs were dying going near them. So the same thing can happen to humans. We have to be careful. Now, I just went over a bunch of familiar seasonal health concerns, and right now the solutions are to warn the public. We see signs saying, don't, speech closed. We've all heard, turn around, don't drown, I hope. We've all heard about Ready, Set, Go. That's a national get ready for wildfire season program. And TV reports and news reports, they'll let us know about high ozone days and high smoke particulate matter days. So right now, that's the solution, is to warn the public about those. Now, we've just gone over a lot of seasonal health concerns. They're familiar to us. Climate changes will make them arrive sooner, leave later, happen more frequently or more intensely. The second pattern is that life on Earth is on the move. You already know about the shoe strikes, I hope, which are protests to bring to our attention that we have climate refugees, because where home is, they've lost where they can work, they've lost their land where they can grow crops, they've lost their homes. Home is no longer there for them. But they're not the only ones migrating. Mosquitoes are also migrating and expanding their territory. On the left there, you see a map of up to 2014 for species Aedes aegypti. And then on the left, on the top, where it's green, you see where they're projected to be as of this year. So if you want to take a moment just to compare the maps, you can see that that Aedes aegypti is marching northward. Yale University found that they're migrating northward at a rate of about 150 miles a year, because it's, they're finding new places that are warm and moist and moving north. But it's not just people and mosquitoes. It's kind of interesting if you look at Canada's experience with Lyme disease. As the ticks that carry Lyme disease migrated north, doctors in Canada were not aware. They were having patients in their exam rooms, and the doctors were not connecting the dots. They were figuring out, oh, this patient has Lyme disease. There was a lag time there. They're better now. But this is why I said before, we need to make sure our healthcare system is ready for what's coming. We need to have our doctors ready to deal with new diseases that we anticipate will come. That cute, wonderful bat giving us the beautiful smile, that is a vampire bat. It is currently migrating from South America into Arizona and Texas. Its sole source of food is blood, hence its name, vampire bat. Generally, it sucks the blood of livestock. So this is a concern for our cattle ranchers, but it also carries rabies. And that's how their migration could impact our health. So diseases are migrating too. Dengue and other diseases being carried by mosquitoes are being carried into new areas. Same with Lyme disease, and old familiar vectors may expand in number. We already have skunks, foxes, prairie dogs, they all carry rabies. And now we might have yet another carrier of rabies coming into Arizona. Plants that need to be in cooler temperatures are migrating to higher elevations. Fish are migrating to colder waters. Other animals are migrating. For plants, fish, and other animals, it's migrate or go extinct. This leads us to the third risk to human health, and that is food insecurity. For the Inuit of Greenland, their primary source, main source of food is what they fish and what they hunt. And their food is migrating to other places. So this is a threat for the Inuit. This is a starvation risk and a malnutrition risk. Here in the USA, climate change is exacerbating existing problems in food production, food quality, food distribution, mainly due to how climate change is changing water, how much water is falling, whether it's too much or too little, and temperatures, if it's too hot. Farmers are experiencing failing crops due to drought, fires, or floods. If you recall the floods in the Midwest, I think that was in 2019, right? A lot of farmers couldn't even plant their crops during those floods. With regard to food quality, the higher the carbon dioxide is in our atmosphere, the less protein there is in rice. So with and rice feeds billions of the world's population. So for those kids, as we move forward, each bite of rice is going to have less and less protein in it. A solution that we have here in the Southwest includes agroforestry. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Southwest Agroforestry Action Network, but this is a group of experts and non-experts. Everybody is welcome. They're into integrating trees, crops, and animals to regenerate Southwest landscapes. So they're about landscapes and growing trees and stuff, but as someone in health, what's exciting about agroforestry is not only does it increase carbon sinks to clean carbon dioxide out of the air, it also increases diversity and nutrients available. And so it can build our nutrition resilience. And if we plant right, we can be collecting food throughout the year. We can have multiple times of harvest times depending on what we plant. So agroforestry is an exciting way to have shade, to have food, and to have nutrition resilience moving forward. The fourth pattern is our exposure to water pollution is going up. With drought, pollutants become more concentrated as water volume goes down. With heavy rains, contaminants go in the rain runoff into our water system, including waterborne diseases. And yes, that can happen in the USA too. In Louisiana, they had the brain-eating amoeba end up in their drinking water. So that has happened in the USA. Usually we're thinking of cholera overseas, but we can have it happen too. What we can do is conserve water. I don't know if others know about this, but hey, here in Flagstaff, we do have a water conservation effort. They will help homeowners cover the cost of water conserving toilets. So there are things out there that we can do to conserve water. Air pollution. Our exposure to air pollution is going up thanks to climate change. Some of that is due to what we've already talked about with regard to wildfires and haboobs and dust storms, et cetera. And some of that air pollution is causing climate change, burning coal, burning fossil fuels, et cetera. How is climate change exacerbating our exposure to air pollution? Here's one way. Inversions are happening more frequently because of climate change, and inversion is when warm air sits on top of cold air, so the cold air can't rise. Meanwhile, human activity is pumping pollutants into that air, and we're breathing that air. What we can do is reduce carbon emissions. Oh, I hope you love this photograph. This was taken by a cousin of mine. It's of Los Angeles during the shutdown. Look how clear that sky is. I want to mention the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act of 2019. It's not passed yet. I checked a couple of days ago. It's just sitting in committees, which I think we all know about and heard about before. But let's not forget it's there. We can push for that. We can tell our legislators, hey, you know what? We want this. We want this act. We can go to green energy. Now, a lot of people, they see, excuse me a second, there. We see solar panels over a parking lot and we think, yay, less fossil fuel being burned and so forth, but there are other health benefits to having solar panels over parking lots. Is that we have solar panels over every single parking lot, because not only does it reduce air pollution from burning less fossil fuel, etc., it provides shade for urban heat islands, which will help people avoid heat stroke and heat exhaustion. What about the babies who get left in cars? It could help them. So it could do, it does a lot more than just green energy. One health concern which spans all four patterns is due to the fact that climate change is bringing profound loss to many of us. And when we experience profound loss, we are at higher risk of anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. The CDC found that American farmers, there's been a 40% increase in suicide among US farmers. They are facing economic nightmares of floods, droughts, livestock losses, prices dropping because of trade wars, increased farm debt. It's coming together to create a perfect storm of hopelessness. Climate change's impacts on mental health will be harder for those of us who have pre-existing health conditions, as well as no money, very few friends and family, and if we don't have access to mental health services, which is why I said at the start, we need universal health care, including access to mental health services. Mental health resilience is already harder for those of us who have been marginalized in any way. Mental illness is the health concern that spans all four climate change patterns that we've just talked about, because any loss and any stress that we experience can set us up for mental illness of depression, anxiety, and so forth. There are reams of studies, but first I want to mention one thing that we can do. There is a program for mental health first aid, and we can enroll in it and we can learn how to become mental health first aid providers. So that's one thing we can do to build our resilience moving forward with regard to mental health and climate change. But there's reams of evidence that shows that green areas boost mood. Regular visits to green areas help kids with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. In other words, we can plant mental health care. Going green can help with mental health. So not only does it provide cooling shade, filter rain runoff, and all the other things that we've talked about. Swiss ecologist Thomas Crowler said that if we plant 1.2 trillion trees, we can remove 10 years worth of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And I did the math. That comes out to 1 year of Saturdays, so 52 Saturdays, 4 trees per person. Now, I'm not asking you all to go out and plant 4 trees every Saturday for a year. What I'm saying is that 1.2 trillion trees is doable. It's not a scary high number. My husband, who's a forester, planted 600 bare root tree seedlings in one day. So that, don't be, that 1.2 trillion tree number is not beyond our ability. You can tell people about climate change's negative health impacts on health. You can let them know there are solutions, there are specific actions that people are doing right now to cope, to save high climate risk lives. You can let them know what they can do too. And when you talk to folks, try to avoid graphs and data because that scares people off. Bring it home. Climate action saves lives. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, I'd love to know what they, I just need to figure out how to make this go away. Hang on a second. Trying to click, there it goes. Okay. All right. So we didn't have any questions.
Thank you, Catherine. That was very, very amazing presentation, and you have a great turnout tonight. So Jenna's going to go through the questions are in the chat box. So Jenna's going to kind of share them with you.
Okay.
So you don't need to worry about that. She'll read them to you.
Okay.
And then everybody's muted right now, and Jenna's kind of in charge of the microphone situation. So I'm not sure if we have kind of a large group, it'd be kind of hard to monitor dialogue, but I'm going to let Jenna take it from here. I just wanted to give her some time to get situated in that chat box that got full of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Jenna is...
Sorry, Catherine, I was crying.
Crying?
Having some internet issues as usual here. Can you hear me now, Carrie?
Yep, we can hear you.
Carrie, can you hear me at all?
Yeah, we can hear you, Jenna. Yeah, we can hear you, Jenna.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was on 2 devices and I had blocked myself from being able to unmute myself on my phone, which was how I was doing things earlier. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for putting questions in there, and please continue to do so. So one of the questions was from Bonnie, and it is, what is the impact to the human population of the Louisiana insecticides?
That is a really great question, because you would think that they might cause cancer or hurt our pets. I can only tell you what the CDC says, and the CDC says that these insecticides are perfectly safe. People can even be out while they're spraying the neighborhoods if they want. Their pets can be out while they're spraying neighborhoods. They also say if you feel better going inside when they're spraying, that's fine too. So the message from the CDC is that these insecticides are safe.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you for the question, Bonnie. I'm afraid to turn my video on, so apologies. So another question was from Alfred, who also is a big fan of your slides and might want them. So the question is, how best to mass upgrade populace rapidly to a vegan diet for ethical, environmental, human health, world hunger, world peace benefits?
Oh, that there's a lot to unpack in that question. Oh, golly, I don't think there's a simple answer. I'm going to be honest. I really don't think there is a simple answer, but I do support a vegan, ethical diet. And we know that livestock contributes to climate change. So I'm so sorry, I just don't have a strong answer for that one. That's a really tough one because I'm thinking of cultural norms. For example, the Inuit, they can't go vegan in Greenland. They have to be able to hunt seal and polar bears and caribou. That's what their diet is.
Thank you for addressing that question. At least I knew reading it would be a tough one. So thank you, Alfred, for asking the hard questions. And
yes, definitely.
Great answer. Sometimes I think that's a difficult thing with solutions, that they have to kind of work for everyone, or they might not be the best option and people might not support them. So great answer. All right, another one here from Debbie this time. Hi, Debbie. And she wrote, it seems that the Yavapai County Office of Emergency Management is a reactive system to a crisis.
Yeah.
How do we get them to understand that in the light of climate change, their system needs to be proactive?
I think health, this is when we can talk about health as a way to frame climate change as a concern. So rather than say to them, climate change is a concern, you could say, look, heat waves, what can we do to make it so that people survive heat waves? And make it about the health problem instead, and you might get more support. That also reminds me, I heard too, I just want to add, I heard too, I think it was down in Yuma, that some city in Arizona, I think it was Yuma, has a climate action plan, but they purposely took the phrase vulnerable populations out of it because they thought it was political. Now that was disappointing. That's the opposite of putting them at the top of the list, you know.
All right, we have one from Patrick. Hi, Patrick. And it says, do you know if the Coconino Health Department is involved in all of the climate discussion in the Flagstaff area? They are not in Yavapai County.
That is such a great question. I know that the folks at the Coconino Public Health Department are working as hard as they can and doing the best they can. When the city was putting together its climate action plan, the health department did meet with the city representatives to add the need for mosquito monitoring and surveillance in that plan. It is hard to get the public health department to communicate more, though. I think we wish that they were more vocal and open about climate change and the health impacts of climate change.
All right, thank you. I'm scrolling through. Sorry, there's some other messages of comments I'm trying to get around. Bonnie's made me laugh. All right, the next question is from William. Hey, Bill. And it says, I used to use Mallathon with the MD Department of Agriculture to combat EEE. Hoping you know what that is. That is dispersed by droplets that settle after about an hour.
Okay.
And sorry, my sound is delayed, so I'm not trying to interrupt. And so if you can see that question, you are more than welcome to, but he is asking where there is spraying you should avoid. It is a concentrated form that can be neurotoxic, but it doesn't bioaccumulate like other pesticides.
Okay, I don't see a question. Thank you, William, for that comment.
Maybe there's not one. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was not a
Thank you,
question.
William. It's always good to hear from people's personal experiences, because I certainly do not know everything. I think it's impossible for one person to know every single detail about everything. But I will tell you this, there's some exciting research using a bacteria that when the mosquito has the bacteria, that bacteria impedes viral replication inside that mosquito. So that's one thing that they're trying to eliminate these viruses. And another one is genetically modified mosquitoes who are genetically resistant to these viruses, and they release them into the wild. They mate with the regular population, and the hope is that they will eventually become a mosquito population that is resistant to the viruses and eliminate the viruses that way. Now, there's exciting research out there.
Thank you. And I think, please raise your hand or put questions in there if I missed any, but I also kind of had, it's kind of a thought as well, but I wanted to thank you, Catherine, for mentioning mental health. I mean, there's just so many impacts of climate change and that's one I think people don't even think about. And, you know, it's hard to recognize all of them. So I really appreciate that. And I just kind of wanted to maybe hear your input again on really how equity comes into play. It seems like all these health issues are going to kind of affect low-income communities, people with weakened immune systems, pregnant women, elderly, and just kind of what are your thoughts on how much equity plays into the health impacts of climate change?
There, no doubt. That's why I said at the start of the presentation that those folks, our neighbors, our friends who are people of color, people low income, pre-existing health conditions are going to feel the negative health effects of climate change more severely than the rest of us. And that's why I said we need to put them at the top of the list when we're putting together action plans and adaptation plans and mitigation plans. And that's why I was so excited by Ahmedabad's efforts, because that's what they did. The people who were poor were the ones who were getting the white roofs. The people who were poor were the ones getting the water tankers, the tanks of water during heat waves. And that's what equity looks like in action. And we have to change from talking about equity to that, to what Ahmedabad did, into action. And not just talk about it. Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that, because we do that a lot for sure. And you know, it's hard to convince sometimes people who have the means to do that. So it's a great thing to kind of really work on. And I know a lot of people are focused on that.
Yeah. Jenna, I did see one question. Jolene,
so
she asked Catherine if the same types of masks to prevent COVID spread protect against the air particulate matter that you were talking about. Well, do those masks help with the air particulates as well, or?
Well, just like with COVID, they help some, but they're not going to be 100%. Folks in California might know that they were actually talking about during the wildfires recently that they were glad they had the masks and they were wearing them to protect themselves from particulate matter. But it depends on the mask. I'm sure, I think we all have gotten incredibly educated about what the masks do and what they don't do. So please forgive me if I'm repeating information you already know. The N95 masks that are currently reserved for healthcare providers that used to be available at Home Depot for those of us who do woodwork, those are the masks that probably would help us the most. N95s. As long as they fit really tight. You have to make sure they fit very tight to your face. The regular surgical masks will help some, but you're going to get particulate matter if you're in a smoky area or in the middle of a haboob, or yeah, you're gonna get that in your lungs.
Thank you, and thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll wrap it up here with a great question from, sorry. So last question is from Jim Gale, and it says, saving lives seems like a universal hook. What is an example of how you take this message home in a short conversation?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the beginning. Could you repeat the question?
So he said, the first line was, yeah, it says, saving lives seems like a universal hook.
Oh, yeah, yeah, to take it home, talk about how heat waves are going to hurt people with cardiovascular conditions, people who don't have air conditioning, people with diabetes, because these things are happening now, and people will understand, oh yeah, when it's hot out, I really do have more trouble and I really do have to be more careful. And the heat waves are going to happen more frequently. Yeah, that worries me. So that's how we can bring it home.
All right. Jenna, are we ready to wrap up, or is there anything else in the chat box? She's muted, hopefully. I know. Thank you for bearing with us. And, our technical issues are always a challenge, but the content is always so worthwhile. So I'm going to go ahead and just, I'm going to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and a special thanks to Catherine for being here. We really appreciate your ability to talk about the impact that climate change has on our health, just our physical health and our mental health. It was super, educational. Thank you for mentioning the shoe strikes that are happening in Flagstaff, and also the Carbon and Dividend Act. We've got some upcoming events. Our NAZCA website, which is nazcca.org. Jenna's going to drop some links in the chat box while I rattle all this off, but we have our first virtual fundraiser coming up on December 12th, and the tickets are just popping off. We are selling them hot. So please, we really, really want you to come join us. It's going to be a special night with music and trivia and reflections back on our year and our successes. So we don't want you to miss that. That's on December 12th at 5 p.m. It's called a Celebration of Climate Action. And right after that, on December 17th, we have our first book discussion with Tom Bowman. He's an author from Long Beach, California. He's an advisor and a speaker and a change maker. His new book is Resetting Our Future: What If Solving the Climate Crisis is Simple? Something we all want to have happen, and that'll be our last presentation for the year, ending on a high note. And you can get all of these links in our chat box, or go to our website events tab, and you can see all of these listed there. So I think I covered everything. Did I miss anything, Jenna? There's so many comments in there, I couldn't possibly. We'll also follow this up with an email to everybody that registered to make sure we didn't miss anything, and anybody that asked for access to the PowerPoint slides, we'll check with Catherine. If she's willing to do that, we will share them as well. So, all right.
Thank you everyone for coming, and tell people about health and climate change. It's a powerful tool. It is. And somebody was saying, how do you connect with people who are science illiterate? They understand their health. They understand that they need to be healthy. So that is a way to communicate with the deniers and so forth.
Right.
It really is.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Stefan was kind to remind me to mention, not only are we having all those fun virtual moments during our fundraiser, but if you purchase a ticket, you have access to our exclusive silent auction, where we have thousands of dollars worth of great gifts, gift certificates, artwork available to bid on. Even if you can't come on the 12th, you can still buy a ticket, make that contribution because it's going to a worthy cause, and you'll still have access to that silent auction. So super win-win-win. All right. Thank you. What a great turnout tonight. I'm so glad to see everybody. So have a good night, and we'll see you virtually again soon.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, and thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you,
Thank you.
Catherine. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Catherine.